The horse breeding industry is not just a symbol of traditional culture, but also a significant economic contributor worldwide. Across vast grasslands, the image of powerful herds of horses has become an indelible mark in human history and life. What's even more fascinating is how this traditional industry continues to generate billions of dollars in revenue each year, reshaping the economic and cultural landscapes of many nations. Currently, the United States owns around 7.2 million horses and 442,000 horse farms, forming a vibrant economic sector that significantly contributes to the national GDP. Meanwhile, China leads the world with over 11 million horses, of which more than 20% are raised for meat production. These figures not only demonstrate the scale of the industry, but also underline the importance of horse breeding in the context of globalization. Globally, the total number of horses exceeds 60 million, with annual revenues from this sector surpassing 300 billion. Leading countries include not only the US and China, but also Brazil, with over 5.7 million horses, and Australia, with more than 400,000. Each country leverages the value of horses differently, from commercial purposes to tourism and entertainment, creating a global value chain full of potential. The US horse industry directly contributes $74 billion to the economy and provides around 1.3 million jobs. Direct contributions refer to economic activities within the horse industry, such as horse care or entertainment. However, these direct economic activities also stimulate related industries such as transportation, feed production, and veterinary services. In fact, horses are not merely animals, but are a vital part of economic and social ecosystems in many nations. As a result, the total economic impact of the horse industry in the US is $177 billion and around 2.2 million jobs. The horse racing industry is a prime example. Often called the sport of kings, horse racing is a thrilling spectacle that captivates the imagination of millions worldwide. Iconic racetracks like the Kentucky Derby are not only cultural symbols, but also generate over $15 billion in annual revenue. A racehorse costs on average around $300,000, while prize-winning horses can be valued at millions. Training a racehorse requires meticulous investment, from breeding selection and diet to specialized exercise regimens. Trainers must approach horses gradually and systematically, starting with foundational basics, focusing on desensitization and building trust. At the same time, they incorporate alternate training to build endurance and gradually introduce speed exercises. Additionally, the horse riding tourism industry is thriving, especially in the western states of the US. With over 2 million visitors annually, revenues from horseback riding tours reach around $300 million. In safari parks across Australia and Europe, horseback riding services generate over $1 billion annually, enriching the travel experience and connecting people with nature. The Royal Angelasian School of Equestrian Art is one of the most renowned traditional horse riding schools in the world. With 117 Angelasian horses, staff and students, This school is dedicated to preserving Spain's traditional equestrian style. The highlight of this school is its professional and impressive performances, which attract numerous tourists. Globally, farmers do not focus on raising horses primarily for meat, as they do with broiler chickens. This is because it takes significantly longer time for a horse to reach optimal weight. Breeding horses to achieve efficient feed conversion and economic growth involves many risks. However, horse farming continues to be maintained and developed. In California, approximately 2.5 million acres of land are used for horse grazing. Every year, at the end of April, farmers move around 1,500 horses to other pastures for better feeding opportunities. On average, an adult horse requires daily feed equivalent to 2% of its body weight. In addition to grazing, their diet includes a mix of corn and soybeans. In the evenings, after a day of grazing, farmers herd the horses into fenced areas to rest and protect them from potential predators during the night. Horses typically breed in spring, from February to May, when the weather is warm and food supplies are abundant. These favourable conditions support the embryo and development of the foal in the mare's womb. On average, a newborn foal weighs around 110 pounds and can stand immediately after birth. This instinctive strength reflects their legacy as creatures accustomed to roaming the prairies. During each farming cycle, farmers need to brand their horses. This practice helps them to manage their herd effectively and register with the local horse farming authorities. On a different note, raising horses for meat has its own unique cultural and economic characteristics. Horse meat accounts for around 0.4% of Spain's total livestock production. Among the registered horse farms, 15% are dedicated to meat production, most of which are located in the northwestern regions of Spain. Over the past decade, horse meat production in the country has increased by around 51%, with a majority of the meat consumed in European markets. Horses raised for meat production can either be transported directly to slaughter facilities or spend time in feedlots for fattening before slaughter. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, the global production of horse meat amounts to approximately 330 million pounds. Among the leading producers, Argentina ranks first, accounting for around 70% of the world's horse meat supply. In China, over 1.6 million horses are raised for meat annually, generating revenues of approximately $2 billion. Horse meat, rich in protein and lower in fat than beef, is increasingly popular in countries such as Japan, France, and Italy. In France, over 9 million pounds of horse meat are consumed each year, making dishes like horse steak and horse sausage a distinctive part of the local cuisine. Beyond meat, horse-derived products like milk and leather also hold significant economic value. Kazakhstan produces 110 million pounds of horse milk annually, which is used in the production of premium foods and cosmetics. Horse leather is utilized to create high-end backpacks, footwear, and furniture, especially in Europe, where revenues from these products reach hundreds of millions of dollars each year. More than just an economic sector, horse farming plays a crucial role in preserving and promoting cultural heritage. In Mongolia, the United States, and Australia, horses symbolize history and national identity. Horse riding festivals are not only entertaining events, but also serve as bridges between the past and the present, recalling times when horses were an indispensable companion in human life. In the United States, over 1.4 million people are involved in horse-related activities, from breeding and transportation to entertainment. This deep connection highlights not only the economic value of horses, but also their cultural and social significance. The horse farming industry, blending tradition with modernity, continues to thrive, generating tremendous economic value while preserving cultural heritage. From thrilling races to tranquil horseback tours, the industry demonstrates the horses are not just symbols of strength and beauty, but also integral to humanity's journey of development. More than just an economic sector, horse farming is a vivid testament to human creativity and effort in harmonizing nature with the economy. With its timeless potential and value, this industry will remain an indispensable part of animal husbandry. Across the world, nearly 2 billion people rely on livestock to meet some or all of their daily needs. Livestock farming forms part of the livelihood of at least 70% of the rural poor, including millions of pastoralists and nomadic herders. Nomadism is a way of life marked by the constant movement of groups in search of natural resources. This mobile lifestyle requires profound adaptation to the environment. It also requires detailed knowledge of natural cycles and the geographical conditions of the areas they pass through. Mongolia is one of the last remaining nomadic nations on Earth. Despite a population of only 3.4 million, thanks to its 273 million acres of natural pasture, the country is home to 5.47 million cattle, a massive number. Around 80% of Mongolia's territory is covered by vast grasslands, extensive steppes, and forests, primarily used for free-range cattle grazing. Half of Mongolia's population lives a nomadic herding lifestyle scattered across the country, with cattle herds now reaching nearly 70 million animals. They reside in yurts, with each herd averaging around 300 animals. Each year, nomads migrate around 2 to 4 times, depending on pasture availability. These migrations are not random, but follow precise traditional principles. Mongolian nomadic families move to different pastures according to the seasons. Harsh winters cause severe food shortages for cattle. Thus, herders have no choice but to feed cattle dry wheat stalks or tree leaves in closed shelters instead of letting them graze freely. When spring arrives, the cattle are moved to areas free from rocks, swamps, or slippery paths. These fields are where the first herbs begin to grow, helping the herds to recover after the cold winter. In summer, grass grows more abundantly, but the herds must move frequently. Farmers cannot graze cattle on the same pasture for 2 consecutive years to allow grass to regenerate or prevent parasites. By autumn, cattle must gain weight in preparation for winter. The herds graze and roam freely, with herders checking their location and numbers every few days. Milking is done more regularly, around twice a day. Nutrients and proteins from the milk help nomads survive in the harsh environment of the steppe. November, just before the onset of winter, is the ideal time for slaughter, as cattle have their highest fat reserves at this time. Meat from the slaughter can be naturally frozen and dried. Typically, they slaughter multiple animals at once to provide food until the following spring. Mongolians consume 110 million pounds of cattle meat annually. Despite having large numbers of cattle, Mongolia is not a major exporter, with most meat consumed domestically. Traditional grazing systems on arid grasslands are highly efficient. Studies show that protein levels in the cattle meat of nomads in Mali and Botswana are twice as high as that of cattle raised under similar climates in Australia and the US. Beyond meat and milk production, farmers can also use cattle as an alternative source of labour. They are invaluable to herders for work in the high hills. The famous yaks of the Himalayas are well known. The high altitude and harsh climate have produced a strong and resilient breed. Farmers use yaks to plough fields, and they are also used as transportation and pack animals by the Tibetan people. In the vast and remote lands of Asia, nomadic communities have a long-standing tradition of raising millions of goats, an integral part of their way of life. Wandering across expansive grasslands, these herders rely on extensive knowledge of the land and seasonal rhythms to sustain their herds. They keep 1,200 goats on grazing lands spanning around 750 acres. This is the nomadic herding system of the famous Kerman province in Iran. The nomads move their livestock across the region's pastures from May to November, with most migrating south during the autumn and winter. Men primarily take on the more physically demanding tasks, like herding, while women engage in milking and caring for the herds. Goats make up an average of 89% of the livestock, reflecting that the Kerman's nomads' economy relies heavily on goat farming. In the evening, they bring the smaller animals into their tents to protect them from the cold night air. Herders depend on these animals for food, clothing, and wealth. Goats provide them with milk, meat, and also serve as assets and means of trade. Nomads can sell or barter their goats at weekly village markets. During the dry season, limited food and water supplies harm the animal's health and fertility. For this reason, herders place special care on maintaining their herd's health as they move through the arid regions. For centuries, around 4 million Afghans have pursued a migratory lifestyle, often with substantial economic benefits. They drive herds of sheep across the country, from the warmer lowlands in winter to mountain pastures in summer. In these extensive grazing systems, ewes give birth once a year and are grazed freely in a low-input system. The herds are monitored by nomads 24 hours a day as they roam on grazing pastures, with few fences or enclosures in Afghanistan's grasslands. Sheep are easier to trade in rural areas than cattle. Generally, a nomadic family needs a minimum of 100 sheep to maintain a stable economic livelihood. The tents, vibrant clothing, and herds of hundreds of animals have become symbols of Afghanistan. They also contribute significantly to the country's economy, producing most of the raw materials for beloved grilled meats and its renowned carpets. Now let's embark on an incredible journey to a remote mountaintop in the heart of Eastern Europe. The Carpathian Mountains are home to shepherds. Here, shepherds produce traditional cheeses and dairy products known for their high quality and rich flavour. As the sun sets over the rugged peaks of the Carpathians, farmers begin gathering their sheep for the night. This family owns 800 milk sheep, 200 lambs, and 50 rams, with each group herded in different areas of the mountains. The lambs are separated to prevent nursing, allowing the ewes to produce more milk. They are taken to higher ground, where finer grass aids their growth. The larger pastures are reserved for milk sheep. The rams are kept apart from the ewes to avoid early breeding. The sheep are milked twice a day. Each shepherd, with skillful hands and a steady rhythm, can care for around 160 milk sheep, completing the task within an hour. When summer comes and the grass begins to wither, food supplies dwindle, and the sheep are milked only once a day. Though less in quality, the milk becomes richer in fat, and the cheese produced during this period is highly valued. After preliminary processing, the milk is placed in bags. Any trapped air can encourage mold growth, so farmers use needles to release any gases produced during fermentation. The cheese is then stored until September, before being distributed to the community. Mountain herding always poses the risk of predators, such as bears and wolves, but shepherds, along with their loyal dogs, skillfully ward off these threats. A few decades ago, villagers at the foot of the Carpathians measured their wealth not only by the land, but also by the size of their sheep flock. But now, the mountains are nearly deserted, and once thriving flocks are on the brink of decline.